Oh, boy.
Party?
Yes!
No.
Yes?
No parties. Mom said you couldn't have one because of your report card.
Mom's not gonna be home for another 4 hours, is she?
Writing a likable character is no easy feat. Not to mention writing a character that everyone will find likable, especially when that character is flawed and must go through an emotional arc. It's a tricky balance to have your character toe the line between being beloved enough that you remember them and needing the lesson of the film without being despicable. A great way to achieve this effect is by making your character funny. The release of dopamine and other endorphins from laughter creates a natural high that makes you feel good. It's proven to reduce stress and forms a positive association with the clown, creating a subconscious desire to see them again. But I would argue that humor in a character requires one other factor to ensure you will never forget them: heart. Such as Robin Williams' character in Mrs. Doubtfire, a man who's so desperate to be with his children that he disguises himself as their new nanny to spend more time with them. Along the way, he learns responsibility and how to be a better father, seeing the effect that his past actions have had on them, as well as his ex-wife. By paying attention to the opening, we see the seeds of doubt that grew into a forest of resentment and bitterness which broke apart his marriage. Despite that, we still love and miss the character for his charm and likability.
I have to be with my children.
It's not an opinion, it's barely an analysis, it's just the first 10 pages. Daniel Hillard quits his job as a voice actor and picks up his 3 kids, Lydia, Chris, and Natalie, from school. Despite being prohibited due to bad grades, Daniel throws Chris an impromptu birthday party at their house. Miranda, a workaholic interior designer, returns to the chaos fuming and asks Daniel for a divorce. Despite his obvious love for their children, Daniel is only granted certain visitations, which he bitterly laments. A judge decrees that he has 3 months to acquire a home, make it livable, and maintain a job before considering joint custody, appointing a court liaison to oversee Daniel's progress. When Miranda comes to pick up the kids one day, revealing that she's hiring a nanny to help around the house, he alters the ad so he can become the nanny instead. Going to his brother, a Hollywood makeup artist, they create a flawless disguise for Daniel, an elderly Scottish-English woman.
Euphigenia Doubtfire.
Despite a few hiccups on his first day as their nanny, Doubtfire quickly wins them over with a wonderful dinner and a clean house. To help with the court's ruling, Daniel also gets a job as a packing clerk in a film studio, while Miranda gets reacquainted with an old flame, Stuart Dunmire. As the weeks tick by, the romance blooms and Mrs. Doubtfire grows with the children. One night, Chris and Lydia discover that Doubtfire has been their dad all along, and agree to keep it secret even from the youngest child. Daniel makes nice with a big shot producer and agrees to have dinner with him to discuss some ideas for children's programming. Unfortunately for him, the dinner happens to coincide with Miranda's birthday dinner. Daniel struggles to keep both personalities active at once, but drinks too much and switches them up. He tells his boss that Mrs. Doubtfire has the potential to be a great children's icon, but when he almost tries to murder Stu at dinner, Daniel saves his life, only to be exposed to his family. The courts rule that Daniel is unstable and grant supervised visitation as well as psychiatric evaluation. Miranda and the kids lament the loss of Mrs. Doubtfire, but find that she is now starring in her own TV show. Miranda and Daniel finally confront each other and realize that they have to do what's best for the kids. She agrees to let Daniel be the kids' caretaker after school, unsupervised, and he takes the kids for the afternoon. Miranda watches Mrs. Doubtfire give a monologue about divorce and how sometimes it's the healthier option, not only for the parents, but for the children, ending the movie on a bittersweet note. We open on a cartoon playing out between 2 characters, a bird named Chippy and a cat named Husky, clearly evoking feelings of classic cartoons, such as Sylvester and Tweety. Very much like the opening of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, this could subtly imply what the lead character does for a living.
I'm Daniel Hillard, the actor.
More specifically in this case, a voice actor. The larger point hints at Daniel's motivations, his children. Despite more contemporary cartoons targeting a more mature audience, animation is still widely regarded as children's media. Thus, by opening on a cartoon, it's not only saying that this movie could be for kids, but establishes that Daniel is focused on kids, specifically his own.
Bottom line, I need to be with my children. And I'll do anything to do that. You just tell me what to do.
By being a cartoon character, it also implies that he's a bit of a kid himself, hinting at his hidden flaw, his irresponsibility. Now, something that's been coming up a bit lately is the notion that Miranda is the true protagonist of the film. She does go through an arc, and her choices do affect the plot. Thus, there is a strong defense for this side of the debate. Therefore, it's interesting, to me at least, that we open on a cartoon bird in a cage. Now, a first glance would place Daniel in the role of the free-spirited bird who wants to live and be free. However, if we remember what we learned in The Prestige, bird in a cage symbolism usually equates to someone who feels trapped. Lovable as he is, Daniel doesn't quite fit the metaphor. Miranda does. Not only is she trapped in a marriage to someone she no longer loves, even if at this exact point it's still a subconscious thing, but she's also trapped in her role as the workaholic mom. We later learn that she felt she needed to do this because Daniel always made things harder by being such a free spirit, meaning Miranda had to work harder and harder to take care of their children and their home. The character's master, Mrs. Ballantyne, asks the duo if they're behaving themselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, page 1, and we have the theme of the film.
As we'll soon see, Daniel is a party animal and doesn't do well with authority. However, he's an adult and needs to take care of his kids. As the court will rule, he'll need to get a job, keep it, and find/make a suitable living arrangement for his children. He must learn to behave in order to see his kids again. Which brings us to the reveal of Daniel himself. He is indeed a voice actor, and a fairly talented one since he's voicing all the characters on screen. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that voice acting doesn't usually work this way. However, the script does say he's on an ADR stage. ADR stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement, which helps improve, or replace, the sound quality of an actor's dialogue after filming has wrapped. So this may just be a touch-up session, or maybe he was hired to replace the original person. In any case, Daniel gets a full description here, but the most noteworthy description is that he's rumpled, meaning that he's not a well-kept man. This will come into contrast later when Miranda is described as a neat freak. By the end of the first page, we've inferred that Daniel is a bit of a man-child, and that his motivation is about children. We've implied that he's messy and a bit of a free spirit who does not like authority, thus concluding that his arc will be about learning what it means to be a father and an adult. The cartoon shows the cat grabbing the bird and holding him over a pot of boiling water. If we keep to our interpretation that Miranda is symbolically represented by Chippy, then we can infer that the boiling water also represents something. In this case, it's Miranda's emotions and how they're about to boil over. The following bits of the animation show Chippy setting Husky's tail on fire, and, true to classic cartoon form, he doesn't notice right away. He asks Chippy for any final requests. The bird responds with, "Cigarette?" Husky obliges and struggles to find a light, eventually realizing that his tail is aflame. While there's an obvious bit later on when Daniel, as Mrs. Doubtfire, sets himself on fire, there is also the metaphorical fire of his situation. Though I am loath to call Miranda the antagonist, she is the focal obstacle for Daniel's goals. She controls his visitation rights, and keeping her from discovering his secret is paramount. Despite this, Daniel consistently puts himself in danger, and the third act break is where he finally gets burned by it. So you may have noticed that Chippy asks for a cigarette. While this was more commonplace even 50 years ago, modern children's media does not allow their characters to smoke in any capacity, especially if that character is a protagonist of the film. This is because they don't want impressionable kids to start smoking. As such, Daniel feels that Chippy asking for one is a bad thing, and ad-libs a line about how hazardous cigarettes are. While this does infuriate his director, it shows that he has morals. It also further enforces the idea that he cares very deeply for his children, as the next page will show his major objection is that children watch this show. It's a wonderful example of a save the cat beat. It allows us to get on Daniel's side, even if we won't agree with everything that he does later on. What follows on this page is a discussion between Daniel and his director Lou about the ad-lib. Lou is angry that Daniel would dare try when the animation doesn't match, and the actor has a moral problem with the cigarettes in a kid's cartoon. Since this page is mostly dialogue, we'll just go through line by line.
That line is not in the script. Why did you add it?
Lou is showing that he's supposed to be in control and that Daniel's being insubordinate. This does imply something else about Daniel's character. He has a problem with authority. Classic man-child trait.
Well, I thought I should comment on the situation.
Conversations in movie are supposed to have a natural to and fro between characters, a struggle for control because they're both trying to get what they want. This is Daniel trying to take control of the conversation to get his way.
What situation?
Lou demonstrates his lack of care for Daniel's motives and implies that he doesn't really care about the children. Now, while we know that Daniel is a loving and caring father, his motivation to be with them is a selfish one. He wants to make himself happy. A recurring theme throughout the film is that Miranda and Daniel argue about what's best for the kids, but it's only during the climax that they finally realize what is truly best for them.
Pudgy the parrot has a cigarette shoved into his mouth is morally irresponsible.
Daniel tries to take control again, even going so far as to appeal to Lou's humanity. This is a beat that's repeated a couple times when Daniel has to appeal to the judge for his children.
This is a cartoon, okay? This is not a friggin' Oprah Winfrey special.
Lou reasserts his lack of care by insisting that, due to it being a cartoon, it's not meant to be taken literally. In other words, he doesn't take it seriously. But Daniel's line,
Millions of kids see this cartoon. It's like sending each one of them a packet of cigarettes and saying, light up.
implies that kids do take it seriously. This is Daniel doubling down on his position. This is the 5th time today. Lou's exasperation at Daniel's continual defiance further asserts the latter's problem with authority. You can't ignore this one, Lou. Daniel forces Lou to listen to him.
You can't put words in Pudgy's mouth if his mouth isn't moving.
Lou returns to his topic theme. The animation doesn't match.
What's voiceover? It's an interior monologue.
Daniel at this point has realized that Lou will not budge on the issue, so he tries to negotiate, even trying to get some technicians on his side, all of whom are smokers and thus against him. However, he ultimately loses the battle when Lou reminds him that
This session is costing the studio thousands of dollars.
and they don't have time for his attitude. This is a repeated beat, and it comes up pretty quickly. When Miranda and Daniel are fighting after Chris's party, their argument is very heated, with each one trying to get their point across. When Miranda reveals that it's over, Daniel is so taken aback that he tries to negotiate. He suggests going away on vacation or moving to a new home, but the end result is the same. He loses. Lou has just mentioned that this session is costing them thousands of dollars, but the line continues here saying that Daniel has to choose between a paycheck and having morals. While having morals is a good thing, it can be very hard to stick to them, especially when it means sacrificing financial security to do so. However, it can be a very irresponsible decision, which is certainly true in Daniel's case, as he has a responsibility that cannot be ignored: his children. He's actively foregoing their well-being for his own selfish reasons, noble as they may be. And we'll find out later that Miranda hated him because he turned her into a version of herself that she didn't like, one that had to be a workaholic buzzkill in order to provide a life for their family. Thus, this decision is an affirmation that irresponsibility is Daniel's fatal flaw. We cut to a school where we're introduced to Daniel's 3 children, Lydia, Chris, and Natalie. Their character descriptions give some insight into their personalities. Lydia, the oldest, is described as being tall for her age, quite possibly hinting that she's a bit more grown up than her other siblings, as we'll shortly see. She's also perceptive and bright. Miranda will later be described as perceptive and intelligent. This implies that Lydia takes after her mother more than her father, giving more weight to her maturity. Natalie, the youngest, has a smile that melts hearts. Clearly, she is meant to be the cutest one of the children, but she's also meant to symbolize the innocence of childhood.
Can't you just tell Mom you're sorry?
Wish I could.
Chris, the middle child, true to form, is going through that awkward phase, the beginning of the transition from childhood to adulthood. Daniel pulls up in a car that looks like it's on its last legs, which emphasizes the poor choice that Daniel just made quitting his job. He's clearly in need of money, and the car proves it. He picks up the kids and tells them that he got off work early. The fact that he's blatantly lying to them is quickly dismissed by Lydia adding weight to her character description by deducing the truth. He proceeds to tell them that it was a question of morals, and Lydia mutters, "Actors." The problem with Daniel's decision comes to a head when the car sputters and fails to stop at a red light, sailing through and narrowly missing a collision. Though this sequence was cut from the final film, the script paints an interesting picture. The children are in the car with Daniel, thus putting them in harm's way due to his neglect. This will come into play in a different way when Daniel's irresponsibility causes Miranda to divorce him, shattering the current relationship that he has with his kids and affecting them in a way that he never intended. This page opens with Lydia addressing the failing car, calling it sick. Daniel clarifies the car is terminal, however, he instantly switches the subject Chris's birthday, thereby shifting focus away from the problem. Classic avoidance. He reveals that he's going to throw Chris a party to celebrate his 10th birthday. Lydia immediately objects, further showing her maturity and her connection to her mother, by reminding them that Mom forbids a party because of Chris's poor grades. This does also show a bit of Miranda's character before we meet her. She's stricter than Daniel, which Daniel further proves when he rebukes with,
Mom's not gonna be home for another 4 hours, is she?
Not only is he ignoring the storm clouds gathering around him again, this time he's risking incurring the wrath of his wife. He's shirking responsibility in the hopes that he'll never have to deal with it. Additionally, note how this line implies how he views Miranda, an imposing person with whom he doesn't wish to tangle. This is particularly important because he does, on some level, see her as the monster she fears that she is. The scene ends with the children all exchanging a mischievous smile, even Lydia. Though she's mature for her age and takes more after her mom than dad, she's still a kid and still wants to have fun. Then we transition to the Hillard residence, which is described as a postcard Victorian house, with a mobile petting zoo and animals surrounding the property, and they're making a mess while Daniel and the children play. A very literal translation of this description is that something is making a mess of a picture-perfect scene. But their neighbor, Gloria, is also distressed by the chaos around them and runs into her house to call Miranda, thereby bringing the storm closer to them. After Gloria asks for Miranda Hillard, we venture to her office. The place is immaculate, incredibly clean and professional, even overlooking the city. By this image alone, we understand that Miranda is an important and powerful person and can infer the workaholic nature that lies therein. We also understand that she is Daniel's opposite in almost every way. He's messy and she's clean. He's unemployed, she's an important businesswoman. He's fun while she's a stick in the mud. However, as we read further, we see that she has framed photos of each of her children. Despite everything that she may do, we understand instantly that she does love and care for her children, which is the only trait that her and Daniel share. Although, it's not what's there that's interesting, but rather what isn't there. The description puts in all caps that there are no pictures of Daniel. The film will go on to tell us that the pair have been married for something around 13 years, so it would be curious that she doesn't have a single photo of her supposedly loving husband, unless she, like Daniel, also knows, even on a subconscious level, that the marriage is already over. Various employees give Miranda their sketches, and she judges them by making calculated, rapid-fire decisions. She's using that character description of being perceptive and intelligent. She has worked hard to get where she is, which is something else that differentiates her from Daniel, and it will be revealed later that this is a factor which caused the rift between them.
I was working all the time, and he was always between jobs. I hardly ever got to see the kids.
Miranda displays her knowledge about stains when an employee has one on his jacket. Unlike most Hollywood depictions of OCD, she's not a jerk about it, trying to help him instead of lecturing him. This is likely to demonstrate her maternal compassion, and she's just as efficient with that knowledge as she is with interior design. Then her boss comes in, talking about an old acquaintance of Miranda's, Stuart Dunmire. Right away we understand a key thing about Stu's character, though he won't be introduced until page 20. He is going to be Miranda's love interest. We've already surmised that there is little holding Miranda and Daniel together on a subconscious level, and inferred that a break is coming. Since most movies featuring divorce have one of the partners branching out with someone different, it's not hard to guess what the narrative purpose of Stu is. But here's where the movie stands out from the others. Stu is more compatible for her. The end of page 7 tells us that Stu not only owns hotels in Europe, but he's also restoring an old mansion and turning it into a B&B. He's driven, successful, and his career aligns better with hers than Daniel's does. Stu will go on to say that he loves Miranda and her kids, and there's no ulterior motive behind the statement. There is only one negative thing he says in the movie, and it's about Daniel.
What can I say, Ron? The guy's a loser.
But even that has a conclusion in the script, which has a scene towards the end where Daniel goes to Stu and admits that he's better for Miranda. The film cleverly sets up storm clouds gathering on the horizon, but remembers to add a little ray of sunshine so that things don't seem bleak for either of our main characters. So it turns out that Miranda isn't just an impressive businesswoman. The dialogue reveals that she started her own business and got bought out, only to retain control due to her skills and work ethic. Her boss commends her and praises that he bought her company since Stu is so interested in dealing with them. She worked hard to get where she is, and it looks like it's paying off in more ways than one.
The operator has a Gloria Cheney on hold. She says it's an emergency.
Oh right, there's still some ugliness that we have to deal with first. It looks like the shoe is dropped, and we cut back to the Hillard residence, still surrounded by zoo animals and some kids. However, the party has some new guests, the cops, who are knocking on the door to no answer. Daniel flouts authority so much, he straight up ignores the police. Miranda drives up, in a nicer car than Daniel's, and is horrified by the scene in front of her. She is instantly angry when approached by the cop, who reprimands her for the livestock in her yard. This is another recurring idea in the film, Miranda having to pick up after Daniel's messes. He shirks responsibility, leaving her to deal with the fallout. But what's worse than that? The fact that this isn't the first time it's happened. As evidenced by the exchange,
Are you aware that it's illegal to possess animals of a barnyard nature in a residential area, ma'am?
What if you're married to one?
we learn that Miranda doesn't have the best view of Daniel. The outright way in which she says this suggests that she's had to do this a lot, which is implied to be the cause of their dysfunction and will result in their separation. As Miranda makes her way into the house, she sees the disastrous mess of the party there. Plates of cake, melted ice cream, and a pony drinking straight out of the punch bowl. The kids are playing and having a good time, but Miranda is just there, amidst the chaos. She shoos the pony away, but it just heads into the living room. Miranda follows until she gets to the dining room, where Daniel is dancing alongside Chris and some other children, showing him literally acting like a child. Daniel does a spin and lands right next to Miranda. Immediately, he is submissive, surprised that she's home early and begging her not to get mad. This does not evoke feelings of a husband trying to avoid a fight. This is a child who has been caught misbehaving. Despite his assurance that he will clean up, Miranda goes over to the wall and literally pulls the plug on the party. But she's about to figuratively pull the plug on the marriage.
Party's over.
The clash between personalities has begun. Miranda starts out talking about Chris's bad grades, despite his intelligence, and how he shouldn't be rewarded for his laziness. Daniel retorts with it being a special occasion. You only turn 10 once. While Miranda does not refute that, she does point out that the cost of fun was destroying the house. Daniel asserts that he was going to clean it up, but Miranda sarcastically doubts this. Daniel replies that kids make dirt, but Miranda decides to use hyperbole to drive her point home. Daniel then gets distracted by Gloria being a nosy neighbor, so Miranda decides to stop being sarcastic or entertaining his side and goes on the offensive. She calls him out on having more free time than her and even calls him out for being unemployed. These words hurt Daniel. Though Miranda will actually ask for the divorce 4 pages later, here ends the first 10, with a major joint flaw between them being revealed. They're hurting each other. They're not bad people, but they do have an unhealthy relationship and they both need to get out of it. At first, it's an unpleasant thing, but they do learn that it was the healthier thing to do. Throughout these first 10 pages, we get a sense that Daniel is irresponsible, immature, and a force of chaos that creates nothing but burden and trouble for those around him, particularly his wife. We truly understand Miranda's worldview and the reasons that she would have to divorce him. We gain sympathy for her because we can surmise how hard she works to make things better for her family, and most of us can probably relate very heavily to that. In most cases, Daniel would be seen as the bad guy. However, through its dialogue and subtle descriptions, as well as some minor symbolism and foreshadowing, we do feel sympathy for Daniel. We understand that he wants to be a good father and that he wants his children to enjoy life. Not to mention that he is very funny, a lot of which can be owed to the performance of the late and great Robin Williams. We understand that he's not a bad guy, just that he needs to grow up. We go for the humor, stay for the heart, but we return because of the likable character.